thank you for the forum. You know, us security people, we need to be able to talk to the people, right? We've got to get the forum so that we can say, you need to do this, right? We can't solve it just with IT. You guys have to be a part of it. So a little bit about myself. Senior cybersecurity engineer for PCG. I've been there about 26, 27 years. I stopped counting. Makes me nervous. I get agita. I don't like it. 27 years at the same company. It's crazy. I started help desk. Like, I don't know where your contacts are. I'll help. All right, we'll figure it out. Built servers. For the first half of the 2000s, really just focused on Exchange, doing email for companies, corporate email, putting all the servers in, sending the mail, getting the mail, configuring them, locking them down, hardening them. From 2010, a little bit further on, started decommissioning them, changing them to Office 365, Microsoft 365, putting them out. And now, probably about the last quarter of my career, really just moved towards security. Got tired of worrying if the hard drives are still spinning, right? Climbing under desks. So now I do security, right? Do the training for PCG, do this, go stand in front of people, talk to them about it. I am a member of CISSP. CISSP, yeah, they should have talked to me about that. They could have done a little better job than that. But I am a member of that group, passed the exam, never want to take it again. And I am a Microsoft certified 365 expert. Got a bunch of Microsoft stuff that they threw in front of me. All right. So if the predominant attack, you've seen a lot of this stuff, we talked about this, right? If the predominant type of attack is phishing, and they're going to try to scare you into action, well, then I got to try and scare you too, right? So here's my slide to try to scare you. Scary statistics. I call this my scary statistics slide, right? 68% of SMBs experienced serious cloud security incident in 2022. It's got little footnotes, so you know it's a real thing, but the footnotes aren't here, but we'll assume it's real. 61% of SMBs felt their organization might be hit with a successful ransomware attack, okay? 4.35 million, right? Scary stats, okay? The reason why I throw this up here is because in order to talk about risk assessments, we've got to start talking about risk, right? We can't really talk about what to do about them or how to manage them, how we go about thinking about them, without talking about what the risk is there first, group them into a group, see them as a pile, understand the whole thing, and then what are the methods and the controls that we can use to try and figure out what to do about them, okay? Button. So what I like to do when I talk about risk assessments is kind of compare both your business to also what you all might be doing at home, right? Because they are quite analogous, right? You'd be surprised, right? So at your home, you're doing a lot of the same things that you might be doing for your business, right? You're locking the doors, right? You know, maybe you've got an alarm system, okay? Maybe you're putting a fence around it, okay? Around the house. If you've got a dog, your dog is alerting you to stuff, right? Your cat, not so much, right? Cat's not so much, right? Got video cameras, right? Exterior lights, maybe the lights come on if somebody walks around. You've got smoke and CO detectors, right? Same thing you might have, a lot of these things you might have in your business. Maybe you've obviously got smoke detectors, but you've also got all kinds of physical protection in your company. You know, so at home, you're doing a lot of these things, right? So in your business, same idea, right? So whereas instead of doing like an alarm system, although your company will have an alarm system, we're also doing automated threat remediation, right? We're doing EDRs, right? We're doing antivirus, right? Instead of front doors, we've got locks on the front doors, but we've also got firewalls, right? We're making sure that we have a block on your internet, no traffic is coming in. We're doing log monitoring, right? We're doing forensic investigation, password management. Craig talked about password management. Diana talked about password management, right? We're doing cybersecurity awareness training, right? If you're at home and you're training everybody, you're training your kids how to get out of the house if there's a fire, we're doing the same thing in your business, okay? So you know, a lot of these things really match up, and it's really an easy way to think about what we're talking about, a holistically large view of what your company does, right, going forward. What is your plan and what is your policy, okay? So in order to do that, right, we need a framework that we can talk about this. And that's where NIST comes in, okay? National Institute of Standards and Technology, okay? They're the governing body that comes up with the controls that we use, right, to kind of categorize what we're talking about so that we have a plan. And a lot of times what I like to do is I talk about this. This is a playbook that we follow, right, so that we're not making it up, right? We can't make it up. It happens all the time, but we really can't. We got to stop, right? Well, firewall costs $1,500. It must be a good one, right? So that just must be fine. We'll just put that in. It'll be okay, right? It's not, right? You've got to have a plan. You've got to understand what the different categories are, and you got to follow it because you got to have a playbook. Because I will tell you that the bad guys and the bad girls, they have a playbook too, right? They are following a list of things that they know how to get into your network, which some of the people before me have already talked about, right? It's an unfortunate concept, but we call it going to the dark side, to steal a little bit from Star Wars, right? A lot of the times, the bad people who are doing these things did what I do for a living before they moved to that, right? They moved to the dark side. They literally did what I did. They went to companies and they went in and said hello, and they put in firewalls and they configured backups and they installed antivirus. And they absolutely now know how to defeat those things, right? And not only do they know how to defeat it, but if it comes time to like ransom you as a company, they know how long it will probably take to fix the thing that they've done to you, right? They know how long a recovery will take, what it might take to get it from the backup, and how long it's going to be. And they know the prices, the average prices that MSPs or response people will charge. So when they're coming in with that ransomware cost, right, it's going to be under what they know that the company is probably. So now a company has a real tough decision. Do I just pay the ransom because it's going to be less? Or do I just say, no, I'm not doing that, and get somebody like myself in there to fix it, right? Really, if you're the type of company where you don't want that to be let out that you got ransomware, right? If you're in the public sector, right? You don't want that to come out. So that's going to be part of your calculation, right? Things you've got to figure out. So they have a playbook, right? So we also have a playbook. It's called the NIST framework, right? Comes in many flavors. Mostly what I'm talking to you about here is the cybersecurity framework from NIST, okay? But they also have 800.53 and 800.171, right? Which are going to be compliance, more oriented towards compliance, right? Especially 171 is going to be aimed at, you want to do business with the government, particularly the defense industry, right? So if you want to do business with Grumman, you're going to need to meet 171. And so that you can meet DFARS, and please do not ask me to do DFARS, I'm terrible at those. But basically, they're sets of controls that say that you can do business with us, right? So NIST does these controls. And so they break it out into 5 categories, right? Identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, right? And like I said, earlier in my incredibly ham-fisted house analogy, right? These concepts actually do map to your home as well, if you think about it, right? So if we talk about identify, right? Asset management at the top of the list, right? We can't protect what you have if we don't know what you have, right? We've got to know who the CFO is. We got to know who's doing accounting. Where's their PC? What's on it, right? What do you use? Do you use QuickBooks, right? What's your line of business application? How are you getting paid, okay? How are you taking money? Okay, we need to know these things, right? Are you taking credit cards in? Are you doing e-commerce on your website? Okay, we need to know what they are because we can't protect it unless we know how your company does business. Okay, so we've got to do asset management. We've got to identify what's there, right? We've got to, you want to talk about, we've got to start figuring out what we're going to need for cyber insurance, right? And do we need to meet any compliance targets for what you do, right? Are you trying to do business with Grumman, right? Are you in the financial sector, right? So do you have several things that you have to do for that, okay? Then we get to protect, right? So protect is when we actually start implementing some of the things that we're going to do, right? You can see number 2 right here, awareness and training. You are sitting right in the protect section of this map. You're doing it right now. Awareness and training, we're talking about it. We're saying what this is, what are we trying to do, right? So every time I go in front of a company and I start to do cyber security training, right? Where I talk about phishing examples, right? And the types of phishing examples that come out there and what they should be doing about MFA, right? And what they should be doing about password. They're right in protection, right? In this category. Maintenance updates, right? Right in this category, right? Everybody hates coming in the morning, firing up their computer. They got a lot of stuff to do, and suddenly Windows is telling them that the updates are happening. Drives them crazy, right? But we have to do it, right? Okay? Because vulnerabilities in every system are being found every day, right? And the only way that they actually get solved is if the companies who are running those operating systems, whatever they are, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Mac, whether it's the OS or whatever's running on your firewall, whether it's your phones, they need to be patched with the patch that resolves the latest discovered vulnerability. Okay, so we have to do the maintenance and updates, right? Protective technology, firewalls, right? MFA, right? We're going to turn on MFA, right? Right in the protection category. Okay, so detection, right? How do we know any of this is working, right? If we don't do any detection, we actually don't have any idea. Okay, so if you think about this, before I lose the bad meme that I'm running here, this also maps to your home, right? So if you identify, right, you're going to fill out the insurance, the home insurance form. If you've got some things that you need to protect, right, you're going to put it down there. I bought a big TV, right? I've got some jewelry. Maybe you've got some artwork, right? Maybe you got some things that are important to you, right? So you're going to mark that out for asset management. Under protection, no one's leaving their door without a lock on it. You might leave it open, right, because you're walking around, but you're not actually not having a lock on your door. That would be crazy, right? So you're absolutely doing things with protection, right? At home, detection, right? We talked about this, right? So if you've got alarm systems, right? Your dog, right? You've got detection, right? Without some sort of form of detection, how do you know if the fence that you built is big enough, right? If you never have anything that could trip that says somebody got over the fence, you don't actually know if you did it the right way. Okay, that works in IT as well. If we're not detecting things, if we're not running EDRs, right, endpoint detection and response, more advanced forms of antivirus, if we're not running antivirus, okay, right, if we're not running like intrusion prevention and intrusion detection on your firewall that's looking at the packets coming through the firewall, right, to see if there's any anomalies that that shouldn't be there, that can block it. If we're not detecting, if we're not reviewing the logs, right, so SEMS will review the logs because humans would go insane looking at logs 24 hours a day, right? So we let computers do it, right? So without some sort of detection, we don't know if the things we're doing working, right? We've got to do constant review of that, okay? Our firewall isn't enough. We're not blocking the ports that we've got open ports. We can't have open ports, right? So maybe we just go for years not knowing that because we're never actually scanning and detecting for it. So detection is an incredibly important one, right? So response, okay? So at home, the police, right? You're going to call 911. They're going to get in the car. They're going to come over, right? Hopefully, right? So response. So for the IT, we're one of the response people. Mainstay's the response people. Maybe you've got some other people in the Rolodex, right? Going to call us. Steve, can't get to the hard drive. Don't know why. Seems like it's got this big thing. We went in and we looked at the server. It's got this big notice that says, you've been ransomwared. It's got words, I hate seeing Bitcoin, right? It says Bitcoin, right? Call us, right? We're going to come and we're going to take a look at it, right? So response plan, response category encompasses the planning that goes into it, but it also encompasses the mitigation that happens, right? So that's the part where we're going to come in and we're just going to be like, well, listen, right? First thing we got to do is yank all the network wires out of the back of the computer, right? We've got to stop whatever's happening from happening further, right? So that's mitigation, right? We're going to clean it up, right? Maybe we have to recover from backup, which is going to be in recovery, okay? And then recovery, obviously, right? It's not just putting the system back to the way it was before the event happened, but that is a big part of it. But it's also, we call it postmortem, right? What went wrong? We did all of this. We got through the first 4 categories, got to recover, and then it happened anyway. So what went wrong? Did we have the right firewall in place? Do we have enough policies, right? Did we train our people enough? Okay, cyber insurance, right? So part of the putting things back to the way they were is to try and get cyber insurance to pay, right? To talk about, to try and pay up the claim that we have that we did get hacked, and that's why we have the insurance, right? So all of that happens in the recovery section. Like I said, this is a playbook that we follow. We're not making it up, right? We've got, so roughly around 100 controls, a little bit more, maybe like 108 for the cybersecurity framework, right? 110 for 171, the last time I checked. John's going to come after and spend more time talking about 171, so he can correct me on that one, right? But we're talking about controls that they have come up, right, that talk about these things. And it's not just IT, right? So one of the things that I do when I do risk assessments, the principals who are in the risk assessment with me will come back and go, well, there were some questions in there that I just didn't even think that I was going to get, but I was surprised to see. Do you do background checks on your employees? Not just at hire, but are you doing them yearly, right? What are you doing with your paper? Are you shredding them, right? That's a control, right? If your paper is sitting in a dumpster, right, outside your building that someone can go through, right? That is a security vulnerability, right? There is a control for that, okay? Are you locking your doors, right, at night? Sounds like a stupid question, but you find a lot of companies, especially if they're in manufacturing, no, we're open, we're round the clock. So we've got open doors, right? So, you're saying no to that control, but maybe there's an exception that you're writing for that. Of course our doors are open because we're always staffed. So then you write the exception, okay? There are controls for documentation, huge amounts of documentation, right? Do you have an incident response policy? Do you have an acceptable use policy, right? So owners will always look at me like, listen, I don't want to turn this into like, I want my place to be a place people like to work, right? I don't want to have to say you can't do things. But it's really important. It's really important that you lay out what is acceptable, so that the lines of communication between you and your employees are there, so that when something goes wrong, you can then start to figure out where it went wrong. Did somebody break the policy? Okay, or was there another reason for it? But if you don't have those communication levels going about what you are not allowed to do, you are not allowed to look at porn here in the company. You are not allowed to gamble. No, you are not allowed to just watch TV on the computer that I gave you. Okay, you've got to have those types of documentation. The other thing I would say about this is that it's really important. It's really easy to get caught in a trap of thinking like, listen, I'm the company owner. I know all of this. I don't have to do this. I know what the rules are. I know I've got to do these things, right? And I would tell you that NIST isn't really designed like that. It's really designed, does the organization know these things, right? It's not enough that you know to call PCG, right? And you know to call 911, okay? And yeah, NIST and myself, we get that you have hired people who can critically think. Of course you have. But critical thinking is one of the first things that gets compromised when everything goes wrong, right? When an incident happens and things are going bad, that's when you don't want to have to try and have people walk around and go, who do we call? Who do we call for this, right? So when the control comes up that says, do you have a list of the people that you need to call? That's an easy one to scoff at. I know who to call. Right? I call the police if it's a break into my building. I call you if it's a problem, right? And we call Intuit if QuickBooks isn't working. But does everybody in your organization know that, right? Well, Steve, you have no idea, right? Do you own your own company? Because I am here all the time. I'm never not here. Of course, I'm never not going to be here. It's not actually true, right? The bad guys, the bad girls, they know when the major conference is for your industry. They know when everyone in the construction industry is meeting in Orlando. So do you think that they're going to run this attack on you while it's happening in Orlando? Maybe you're there, maybe you're not, right? But the bad guys know. They know who you are. They know what you do. They're looking at your business. They're scouting you, right? And Facebook, the greatest, information giver of everything. Facebook, all you do is if they know who you are, if you're on your website, in your About Us, I'm the CEO, they go to your website. If you go to your Facebook page and you haven't locked that down, you're in Europe this week, right? So you're not at the company, are you? And they know that, right? They can do that reconnaissance, okay? So NIST is very much like, do you have everything in place, right? So that you're ready for this moment, so that you're not it's not tribal knowledge, right? It's not just in one person's head, right? Can the organization find the locations on our server, right? Or wherever we're choosing to put them, OneDrive, Google Docs, wherever we're putting them, Okay? Can we find those things when things are going, when we have a bad incident and the pressure is on? Do we know what to do? Do we know who to talk to? When do we talk to the C-suite? When does the IT people or the internal person or the office manager, whoever it is, when does he or she update the company president with the time? When in the process do you start to talk to the media? If you need to talk to the media, if you need to disclose this, okay? Those are things that you want to solve ahead of time. You don't want to try to figure it out when you're under fire, okay? And this is where the framework comes in, and this is where the risk assessment comes in, okay? I did not start my time, so if somebody could, Julia, if you're out there, if you could just let me know as I'm getting close, I'll try to tense it. But so, you know, we got to talk about some of the risks that are coming at you. You've heard a lot of them already, so I won't spend a ton of time on this slide. We don't see a lot of, we don't see a lot of viruses. The malware, worms, and viruses don't really see it that much anymore. In my experience, I don't see that. Saw a lot of it in the 2000s, okay? And literally company owners would look at me and go, Steve, what was that about? Like, it just wrecked my accountant's machine. You had to come and you got to clean it up. It didn't seem to do much, right? But that person was out of work for an entire day. You're going to send me a bill. What was that about, right? And the answer was in the early 2000s, it was just small businesses getting caught in the crossfire of hacking groups and large corporations, right? They're trying to create botnets where they can just get a group of computers together so that they can do denial of service attacks, right? 2010s, we get more broadband, we get more internet, right? We get more cloud accounts, right? And that kind of changes, okay? Now, we see phishing and ransomware are the two biggest attacks that I see for the most part, right? Because it's much easier to just trick you out of it, right? They'd much rather trick you out. It always cracks me up when I'm watching a movie, right? And they've got the little counter with the letters going across the screen, and they're just cracking it. It doesn't happen anymore. Nobody's doing that, right? Yes, they know how to brute force. They can brute force things, but it takes too long, especially with modern encryption schemes. It takes too long. It's way faster to just trick you into giving the password, right? Send you an email, and it's a numbers game. If they send 10,000 messages that all say, do this, and 500 people do it, that's still a lot. How hard is it to send 10,000? It's a button push for a person, right? Or a script for a computer, right? So it's a complete numbers game, okay? So, you've got to understand that this is a numbers game and they're trying to just hit it and so they can just make a lot of money doing that, right? So we see way more just tricking you out of it, right? Password attacks, right? I do see DDoS attacks a little bit. Saw a company president just, called me up. He was getting close to 100 emails every 3 seconds, just constantly just barraged with email to the point where he couldn't use his email, okay? And couldn't really stop it using spam software and things like that, because a lot of the messages that came through were just text. There was no way to stop it. You have to let text through. That's the whole point of having an email client, right? So could completely not use, right, his email until we changed his email address, okay? Just to break that change. Don't see too much spyware anymore. Does happen, right? But, phishing, ransomware, right? They get into your network, right? The single biggest problem that we run into, Craig talked a little bit about password security, but the other one that I see all the time is that people use the same passwords over and over and over again, right? It's the one thing I can't program against. There's no control that I can put in that can tell me that you used the same username and password for your Instagram account, that you used for your login to your network account, right? That you used for your JetBlue account, for your Amazon account, right? For your QuickBooks, your Intuit account. There's nothing I can do to stop that. I can set expirations, okay? But even then, as Craig mentioned, NIST is moving away from recommendations, from expirations, right? They don't want to do it anymore because people are just doing Snoopy 123. And then the next time they get an expiration, they're doing Snoopy 124, right? Or 1234, they add a number, right? It's a huge problem. It's worse than just not changing the password. NIST would now, and we would rather you just have really long passwords, right? As Craig mentioned, but we won't expire them on you, okay? But that doesn't help if you've used it again, right? So the reason why that's a problem is that in ransomware, right, if they get into the network, they can then start to move around, right? If they phished you for your account, right, for your Facebook or whatever, and you use that password, they can then try using a VPN connection to the network. And if you use the same password again, they are now in the network, okay? And now they can lock up the directory that has all of your business data, okay, and ransom you, okay? So these are the risks that you got to worry about, right? This slide just focuses more on email because it's really the predominant delivery method, okay? There are new methods coming around, with the proliferation of like Teams and Slack and chatting. So we're starting to see more ways of coming with this chat, okay? But email is still the predominant business communication, and so that's the number one vector for sending these phishes to you to try and trick you into it. Okay, so this slide is just talking about, the things that we try to do to protect this. Okay, and then you'll see that the controls very heavily focused on how you're handling this. Right? Do you use MFA? It's a primary one. Right? Are you separating out your privileged accounts from your what we call daily drivers, your everyday accounts? Right? Because the number of times we go in and we just see, yeah, no, not only do I have an email account in Office 365, but I'm also the global administrator. It's terrible practice, right? If they phish you and they get into Office 365, they are now the administrator of Office 365 of your tenant, right? Same thing. So lots of controls that will talk about not having privileged accounts and standard user accounts, even if you're a privileged user. You've got to have separate accounts, right? So lots of email questions, right? Are you doing spam and content filtering, right? Right? Are you turning on a lot of the protections? Are you using encryption, right? So we're very worried about, NIST is very worried about, the controls are worried about that you're passing the passwords around in email so that some people can just sniff the wire. You're on your laptop, you're at Starbucks, right? Now, most wireless systems should be single only. They should just be, everyone has their own unique connection to it, but not always. If they're running an older wireless system, you can sniff the other channels, right? And if you're sniffing the other channels, right, looking at the packets, you can see email going around, right? And if you've got passwords in your email because somebody went, hey, do you know what the password? Sarah's on vacation. I need to get into her computer. What's the password? That is now in email, right? Not only is it in email, not only did it get transmitted, but it's sitting in email. So if they get into the mailbox, they can search your mailbox and find passwords, right? So you've got to get encryption going, right? Advanced phishing identification, right? So we're starting to implement advanced stuff, not just spam blockers, but app-based blockers that are literally app connected to Office 365 or Gmail, right? Or any other methods you want to use, right? That will look at the messages after they've arrived in the mailbox, right? So the way we describe this is that if you have spam protection, it's the bouncer outside the club, okay? So checking everybody coming in. You okay? You okay? Should you be coming in? Yes, you can go in. App-based phishing identification and protection, when it's connected to your email, that's the bouncer that's inside the club. It's walking around the place. Thank you. So these are the things that are going. So let's really talk about, we got this. I got to move it up because as I always go on, Liz is letting me know, I run out of time all the time. Now that we know that there's a multi-layer defense, that we've got to have identity protection, endpoint security, email security, right? We've got to have disaster recovery. How do we put that together, okay? So we've got to have a risk assessment, okay? Where we're going to come in and we're going to go over the controls with you, go over all of those things that we're talking about, okay? And these are the reasons why, right? So you want to reduce the risk of a cyber attack. Pretty straightforward, why we're here today, right? Become insurable. Everything that's going on in the risk assessment are many of the things that the insurance company is also going to ask you on the form, right? Do you have MFA, right? Do you have a firewall? Are you using encryption? Do you have VPN? All the things you're going to do in the control and the risk assessment is going to allow you to pass the forms that the cyber insurance company is going to do, right? And then you got to know whether your investments in security are working, right? So what's it look like? So we're going to have a kickoff call, okay? I steal from the popular book and movie every time I do this, what to expect when you're expecting a risk assessment. It goes about as funny then as it just did now, not very, okay? Or as I like to call it, because meetings drive me crazy, right? The meeting to determine the next meeting, right? That's what that meeting is, okay? Where we're going to talk about what your business is, right? Because we need to know what you do, right? We can put generic stuff in, and that's what the salesperson does when you first start talking to IT. We're going to put up a firewall. We're going to have antivirus. You're going to have some PCs. We're going to need a switch, right? And go on. But for the risk assessment, we want to know, what do you do? You're in finance, you're in construction, right? And what is your line of business? Because that's going to inform the controls that we need to do. Then we're going to do the risk assessment itself. We're going to go through the questions. We're going to go through every control with principles. The owner doesn't have to be in it, but whatever the principles are for the company who have determined to be in it, we're going to go over and we're going to ask the questions, right? And when we ask the questions, I don't know is a valid answer as yes or no, right? I don't know informs us that you don't know. And that is going to be in the recommendations, that you do know. You need to know this, okay? That you need to know whether you have an incident response policy or not, okay? It's not enough that you do or don't. You need to know whether you do, okay? And everybody needs to know where it is, okay? You need to know whether you do background checks. I think she does. I think he does. I don't know, right? It's a valid answer that informs how the report is going to come back, right? We're going to review the policies, right? And then we're going to build a report for you that shows you all the answers you had, but you're also going to get recommendations. If they're doing it right, they're going to make recommendations of what you should do next, okay? Speeding along, we're going to do vulnerability scans, which is not penetration testing. Penetration testing is expensive. It's where people actually try to break into your stuff. They try to actually physically show up and go, hi, I'm from PCG, can I walk around your facility and see how far they can get? So risk assessments are not that. But we are going to run vulnerability scans to see if we can get through your firewall, because the cyber insurance company, new insurance companies are now running scans as well, right? And we're going to run internal ones. What can we do inside? Can we get around? Okay. We're going to go over the report with you, right? We're going to go look at it, what needs to happen. You do not need to do everything in the risk assessment right away, right? You're building a list of what you need to do for this year, for next year. Some things that are going to be in the recommendation, you are literally as an owner, you're going to say, or a leadership team, you're going to say, we're not doing that right now, or we're not going to do that, okay? But at least you now know what it is, okay? Compliances are a little bit different, okay? Compliance, you have to meet their requirements, right? Whatever those are. PCI, a lot of you maybe have dealt with PCI. You take credit cards in your business, so you got to meet PCI, right? NIST framework is the one I just kind of went over, but 171 is aimed at, we want to sell stuff to Bath Iron Works, right? So we've got to meet, right, whatever the compliances are for 171 to show that we can handle the data back and forth when we're working with them, okay? If you're in car dealerships, they have to meet GLBA, Graham Leach Bliley. Right? They've got to meet those because the public is walking around their facilities. Okay? So they've got to have MFA turned on, not just for their email, but for their desktops, right? So those are some examples. HIPAA, well known, right? You go to see the doctor, right? HIPAA compliance is incredibly important, that your personal information and your medical records aren't going anywhere. So if you have to meet those, the risk assessment is going to help you meet what that exact compliance is. Okay? So, and then the people doing them, certifications, competencies, I'm going to wrap it up here. As I said, I am a CISSP. I'm not that last one. I don't know if I want to do that one. But knowing whether the people doing the risk assessments know what they're talking about is a key part of it. Okay? So that's what that's about. I know I'm running a little long, Liz, I'm sorry, but we're going to wrap it up and you'll try to get some questions. I am going to be on the panel, so if you have any questions, you can hunt me down. And so thank you for your time.